Okay, so starting a new John, we're talking today about, well, I guess kind of finishing up or expand, not like finishing, but expanding on our Deadpool 3 reactions and the conversation surrounding that to talk about maybe the biggest like universal. I don't mean like universal as in like all encompassing, but universal as in pertaining to the overall, the greater universe takeaway from the movie, which was the concept of anchor beings. And I sent you that video is like a brief little short of Feige talking about how that's going to be important, or I forget, he just kind of referenced like, I'm glad you asked that question, that like we've been playing with this or exploring it and kind of running with it. So I think it's something that's going to show up in the future, but I think it brings a lot of questions into, stuff that we've already seen versus what's going to happen in the future versus how, like, it's almost like a universe defying or universe changing trait that they just brought into, like, casually into what's maybe a side movie from like All Things Considered. And I don't know where they're going to go with it. So yeah, like, what are your, I guess, thoughts after I ranted for the last 5 minutes about introducing the topic?
Well, so I think I was just checking some timeline stuff just kind of to look. So the movie Logan is set in 2029, right? Which is 10 years after Endgame takes place.
But they were in different timelines, weren't they?
Well, technically they're both on Earth 616.
Really?
Yes.
I was not under that impression. Because
Okay. Your
don't they
impression.
say you guys say my impression was wrong?
Well, no, I was gonna say, what was your impression?
That they were in a different universe or a different Earth or whatever. Because like I think they mentioned it. Isn't Deadpool supposed to be on Earth like 10 something or other?
I think Earth 616 is the main like Earth and the one.
I don't think so though. Because remember, like, Spider-Man Far From Far From Home, Mysterio, when he's like talking to Peter and he's like, his whole story is like, I'm from Earth 616 or something, like, as part of his cover. At least I think that's what he says.
Hmm. Okay. All right, let me.
Oh no, he wait, during Mysterio claims to be from Earth 833 and noted that the world of the MCU was 616. Okay, so 616 is, that's fine. That's the name of this. But
The
then
sacred timeline, but it's looking like they're in Earth 10,005.
that's what I thought. It was something with a 10. Yeah.
Uh, okay. So they're Earth 10,005.
Yeah.
Well, was the sacred timeline of 616.
Yeah. So the
Uh,
10 so in Earth 10,005, their anchor being was Logan.
right. Okay. So my next question then becomes, where did they which Earth is the new Wolverine from?
It's a good question.
That makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah, that's why I was confused when you said that they both took place in the same Earth. So I was like, no, I'm pretty sure they're from like a 10,000 thing or
yeah, they're
something like
from
that.
10,005.
And technically they're still there too, right?
Yeah, they're still in 10,005.
Yeah, because they restarted, like they stopped it from imploding,
Prime.
and then they went back there at the end.
Right.
So like we bring Deadpool to the MCU just to leave him on his own planet. So we're still going to be jumping realities and time dimensions and Earths and bullshit. Kind of brings us back to our original point from last time that nothing has actually been solved.
Right.
Okay. Um, so my biggest questions revolving this entire topic were really, I mean, they're kind of basic questions. We're like, what happens before an anchor being is born, right? Like, is
Okay.
there, yeah. And then, I mean, the next question is like, you know, can there be a new anchor being or something? Because like they did mention in the movie that it can take like thousands of years for the universe to actually like implode. So
Right.
like, they've written themselves a bit of a cover story there, which is fine. Um, I mean, if you just look at it based on our Earth timeline of being 2024, they've you know, if you include all the BC stuff, we've got what, like 4 or 5 thousand years of like recorded human history. So
Right.
like, yeah, they've written themselves into like a decent enough situation there. Um, but like, what the fuck happened before they were born, right? Because like, granted, Logan was born in what, like the 1700s, the 1800s. Like he's been around. I know he's been around for a while because they have that montage.
1830 is what it says. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because they have that montage of him and Wolverine, which was really cool, of him and
Him and
Sabretooth.
Sabretooth in
Yeah,
the Civil War. Yeah.
fighting in all the wars, like constantly, like going to Nam, World War II, Civil War, like all that shit. And that's cool as shit. Like that was one of the best scenes in the movie. Um, but like that still leaves you with thousands of years pre-anchor being of history. So how important really is this anchor being? Like it's brought into existence just to like mark when this timeline is going to end, essentially, like when he dies plus a couple thousand years or something. It's like they try and make it, it's like what lane are they picking? Are they trying to make it this like universe defying characteristic that's essential to all paradigms, or are they using it as a throwaway line to make a movie? You know what I mean? Like they've
Yeah.
set it up, they can't unset it up now.
And I can't figure out what there's conflicting reports which Earth the worst Wolverine is from, but they're in a different universe than the MCU, which is interesting because obviously the X-Men timeline and then you have Earth 616, so we have two very core groups in different timelines, and it'll be interesting to see if like one has to destroy the other or something, you know. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
but it
we're still in the same situation where we don't know where we're going,
right.
and we don't know why we're going there.
I do think we're probably going towards um
Well, it's going to be
something
what,
with
Secret
anchor.
Wars? Like, aren't the new Avengers, like we've got the Doom thing, and then it's going to be like Secret Wars or something, right?
Yeah, the next is Avengers Secret Wars because I think they yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still gonna end up bringing like this giant like apocalyptic battle together where everything comes like, but like I don't know to what end. I don't know. I feel like we're kind of getting off topic a little bit from like the idea of like anchor beings, and I want to like try and stay focused because I do want to
Right.
like iron this thing out. Like as the like there's I'm just scrolling through the internet, some Reddit stuff right now. Um, looks like Screen Rant did a decent breakdown of it. Um, So, according to the TVA's Mr. Paradox, anchor beings are select individuals of significance who are vital to holding the existence of their reality together. Okay, so they're select individuals. Who selects them? That's a question that we need to ask, right? So
Right.
we've seen at least one like inter-reality yet like above reality being in the Watcher, right? So we know that there's somebody out there, but he just watches. He doesn't intervene until he
Right.
has to. So um again, like I do kind of like what I texted you before. Like I do think that eventually we have to bring this all to the one above all because it all like it needs to connect somehow. We've got a lot of exposition and we don't have it all melding together and making sense, right? So
Right.
once that being is killed or removed, their reality gradually begins to degrade without them. In the case of Earth 10,005, Fox's X-Men universe, that anchor being was, Logan, Hugh Jackman. Okay.
Right.
So Adobe Flash Player install. Quit that shit. While the decline of reality sands in its anchor being is said to take a couple thousand years, Paradox is impatient and instead created the Time Ripper. Yeah, he was just going to blow it up. And Wade was offered the chance to go to 616. Are anchor beings from Marvel Comics? No, but they could be a form of Nexus beings. Okay, yeah. So this is something I wanted to talk about too, because like a year or two ago, I think it might have even been longer than that. Like we started talking, I think it was before the Wanda show. So we might have still even been like living together or still been in Jersey at the same time. Like Nexus beings, right? Because this is a concept that has been introduced in the comics before. And like, are they the same? Are they related? Nexus beings are, so this is according to the Marvel fandom wiki, Nexus beings are agents of the Queen of Nevers, the embodiment of possibility. They are rare individual entities with the ability to affect probability and the future, altering the flow of the universal time stream. These beings, each referred to as a nexus, act as the keystones of the multiverse and are crucial to its ultimate coherence and stability. Nexus beings are vigilantly watched over by cosmic forces such as the TVA and the Timekeepers to be aware of any temporal changes that the Nexi may cause to the time stream and act accordingly. So, are anchor beings Nexus beings? They sound very similar,
Right.
right? So, and like we were talking about this because in the comics, they had Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda, as the Nexus being of Earth 616. And if the movies are um what is it? Yeah, so if the movies are not directly an interpretation of the comic 616, but they're like a derivative of it, then we have still have the potential like Wanda Magneto connection, but didn't weren't we introduced to Wanda and Quicksilver's parents in the the Wanda show? Like didn't they showed them dying, right? They got nuked.
Yeah, yeah, because they showed them because we heard that they were in the second Avengers with Age of Ultron. All we heard was that they were trapped while a bomb didn't go off in their apartment. But I think in
The Wanda
WandaVision
show.
we watched them die or
Right.
like saw them dead.
Right. So I think that because of that, we have a slight or we have a derivation then of the comics Earth 616 in that they're not direct descendants of Magneto. So that's still my guess as to who the anchor being is for Earth 616 because like we've set her up at this point as like she was important obviously throughout like all the Avengers shticks, but and then her show showed how like I guess omnipotent she can kind of be ultimately. And then we go into Strange too, and she's wrecking nerds and then disappears, right? And I
Right.
think if I remember, I could be wrong about this. I haven't like dug into like Easter eggs in Deadpool 3 yet, but I do remember kind of when they get to the void, there's like a statue of her somewhere. Do you know what I'm talking about? Did you
I
see
don't,
that?
no, I didn't, but
Okay, I'm gonna look that up. Statue of Wanda in the Void, Deadpool 3. Okay, so yeah, there was a TikTok video, at least the mystery of the Wanda statue in Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm not gonna bring it up. Um, okay, did Deadpool and Wolverine just confirm a character's controversial death? Um, did Deadpool Studios confirm Scarlet Witch's death? At the end of Deadpool of Doctor Strange, Wanda brought Mount Wundagore down on herself in order to prevent the Darkhold from fully taking hold of her. While most people wouldn't survive the crushing weight of the mountain, Wanda is one of the most powerful characters in Marvel. There's always a chance, blah, blah, blah. Okay, last year, Marvel Studios, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, an official timeline was released, and a line from the book had some fans thinking Wanda's death was confirmed. Quote, as the kindly 838 Wanda gathers the boys and assures the heartbroken Scarlet Witch they will be loved, the Wanda Maximoff of Earth 616 surrenders. She destroys Wundagore and it collapses in upon itself, ending two great threats to all of the multiverse. Ending two great threats to all the multiverse. However, not everyone thinks this is a confirmation. In fact, Kevin Feige has teased Wanda's return. Well, yeah, I mean, we could always return her as grabbing her from some other Earth or something like that. But what is it? We're gonna get Agatha all along, which will probably. Okay, let's see Reddit. When Deadpool and Wolverine are captured by X-23 at the place where they met X-23, Blade, Gambit, and Elektra, for a split second, we saw a Wanda statue. Yeah, okay, so I'm not crazy. Um, and yeah, so I mean, she was the Nexus being of 616 in the comics. We have to find out who the anchor being is for 616. That's kind of my vote because I still think they could bring her in some respects. Um, there's a lot of like random confirmed Nexus beings from the comics, though. Kang is one of them, but we're not going to see him again. We've got Franklin Richards. We've got
and I
Jean
don't
Grey in one of them, Odin in one of them, Queen Elizabeth, Napoleon, Abe Lincoln, and JFK in a couple of hers.
I don't
So
think they're I don't think it's Anchorman, right? Like um be or I don't think Iron Man is an anchor being. I'm Ron Burgundy.
yeah, that would be
But
the greatest twist of all time. Is if
right.
Iron Man comes back and he lifts up his helmet, it's just hello, Santiago.
Um to your point, because I think if it were him, we wouldn't have Downey cast as Doctor Doom. Like part of what makes me excited for Downey is I think they're gonna leave Iron Man untouched, right? And so I think if you were to have him as the anchor being at some point, I think we might see a Wolverine type situation where they're trying to pull one from another universe where he's not an anchor being to save their own universe, you know?
They could do that though, and have because I think there's a slight there's one spin-off comic or one spin-off storyline where Tony does like basically become Doctor Doom, if I remember correctly. Um, I'm curious as to how they're going to do it. I don't think that they're going to like whitewash it and just be like, um, or like gloss over it and just be like, all right, you know, like they're gonna show Downey without his mask. Like Doom is a masked character, so they could do it and just never like reveal him. But I don't think they're just gonna like have his face as Victor Von Doom, no mask, and just expect us all to accept like and expect the everybody in the actual universe to accept that like yeah, this isn't Tony, and nobody sees the resemblance. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So they could just mask him up the entire time, but
I mean, I think like
and also my last point real quick before I forget it. I don't think that Tony was the anchor being because I think they would have made more of a point of showing the timeline starting to degrade in the 2 seasons of Loki, and then this
right.
one where we're talking about the TVA and the sacred timeline. Like we would have seen some sort of disintegration of the timeline starting to happen if he was actually the anchor being and he was dead. So I
Like
don't
I
think it was
think
him.
Wanda, Hap, right? I think maybe Strange. Um those are kind of like off the top of my head, maybe the three I could see as possible anchor beings for Earth. Um
Or maybe it's like
or
maybe it's an
six.
under. Oh, I can see Spider-Man. You know,
Yeah.
he's kind of
Uh,
been integral to the entire story. He's been integral to Tony's arc.
yeah,
He's
Tony
been
died to bring him back to which necessitated happening to save Earth 616 in the future type deal.
sure, yeah, and like he's the character that they're trying to. It seems like they're trying to frame this all around him, and we know he's like coming back at some point. So I could see that. I want it to be Wanda because I think there's just so much more that we could do with her character than what we've done. Like, I don't know if we've ever really talked about this, but like, I don't know, her going crazy and Strange too, just to save her fake kids or whatever, is slightly unbelievable. Um, yeah, I don't know. I could see them doing something like that. I could see it being like Ant-Man. He's been a random character that also got a 3 movie trilogy, right? Like,
Right.
and he'd be an underdog character, and it would be like, you know, kind of on par with his character, where he's like just some dude who's been like thrown into these crazy situations where he's like gained levels of importance throughout the entire process, and he's just kind of like deer in the headlights the entire time. So I mean, I could see that, but I don't think that they'd make it. I don't think that they would make it Tony. But it still does beg the question of what happened before and what happens after. Because
Right.
I think it's safe to assume, given the evidence that we have, that the 616 anchor being, the MCU anchor being, is still alive. I
Hmm.
think it's safe to I think it's safe to assume.
Um
Because they went through all of Loki season 1 and 2 to protect the sacred timeline. You don't think they would have brought that up as a way to protect the sacred timeline? I mean, it's sacred. It's the only one that they actually care about.
yeah. I mean,
Maybe Loki is the anchor being,
hmm.
you know? And like it just kind of, and that's why it's sacred, is because you have the anchor being who's now in control of the entire timeline, which is what sanctifies it.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, well, technically this is a actually I guess it's the same Loki from a it's still a Loki from but he's not from Earth 616, right? He's from one of the nine realms, which is different than Earth 616.
Well,
But it's
I don't think it's specifically like Earth
maybe it's
six one.
Star-Lord.
That's a possibility. I mean, we could just
Um,
sit here, we can sit here
'Cause
and say maybe like forever, but yeah,
I think it's I mean, technically it would be a different Loki, but it's the same universe Loki. Like, because it's the Loki from the past, not the Loki from the future with Thor where he dies, but it's still
yeah,
like
it's still
technically,
that same Loki from a different
yes,
point in time.
yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a Loki that's specific to Earth 616 or not, because it's like, is it the same? Is the like right? I guess in Loki, that time where they pulled Loki from, it wasn't destroyed, right? It still existed. Um,
What still existed?
they hadn't destroyed Asgard, right? Because technically, for at that point, it was the first Avengers. Asgard hadn't been destroyed until Thor 3 Ragnarok, right? So when they pull Loki, is that Asgard and the Nine Realms, right? Is that this part of Earth 616? That's what I'm right.
Well, they pulled that Loki from a different point in time,
Right. But that's what I mean.
but
Like,
within the continuity of the timeline, Asgard does get destroyed in
right.
Ragnarok, right?
Yes.
So I think first off, there's a couple of things, and again, this is why I think it all needs to tie into some one above all, because we're there's too many weeds that we need to cut to like make this coherent. So I think when they say Earth 616 or Earth 10,005, like that it's not just Earth specifically, but that encompasses like everything, right? That
The whole
encompasses
universe.
the whole universe, right? That encompasses space, that encompasses the nine realms, that encompasses everything. So there's a Thor 10,005 somewhere as
Right.
well, or
Yeah,
something like that,
it
right?
encompasses like nowhere and what's the planet that they are on in the first one where they get sent to prison? Um,
Um, I know what you're talking about, but
right.
well, they
I,
say get sent to like that space prison, the
yeah, but they
the
get
what's it called?
arrested on a specific planet, and that's the one that Ronan wants to destroy. The Kree wanted Xandar.
Xandar.
So they're
Yeah, yeah.
Xandar. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it encompasses everything, right? And like we kind of have confirmation of that because in the void, there's all those different fucking Lokis, and
Right.
Sylvie is technically a
And
Loki
Deadpool.
from
Yeah.
yeah, and Sylvie is technically a different Loki as well. So there's multiple Lokis, which means there's multiple like Asgards, and there's multiple Asgardian
Right.
gods, there's multiple Thors, there's multiple Odins, there's multiple everything, right? So the continuity of 616 is still maintained. They've just essentially replaced the dead Loki with the same Loki from a different point in time. But
Right.
that didn't like, and it caused like a rift, I guess, in the space or in the timeline, which is why Loki season one happens. But they
Right.
ultimately like fix it by going through Loki season two and killing He Who Remains, and Loki stepping up and becoming the time god guy who just
Right.
controls all the time. Which
Well, and
is
also it
why,
exists outside of time. So technically, in 2019, on in Earth 616, Loki's still dead, right? So you get what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
Loki is dead and has been removed from that timeline. So it's stable, but that's also why it's sacred, is because that Loki is still technically alive. He's just alive
right.
outside of time, maintaining the continuity of the timelines and ultimately ensuring its continued sanctity.
Yes.
I, I, this makes sense. I fuck, dude. It's not who I want it to be, but I think it makes the most sense. It's what makes that timeline sacred, is that their anchor being, until he decides to not be Time Lord anymore or whatever, will never like die. you know? He's just going to continue to exist in this realm outside of time where he never ages and never grows old.
The only
And
potential issue I could see with this is if this is the case, then how do you really like I feel like the what we're seeing in this is like the way to create a big bad or like a obstacle to overcome is the timeline losing your anchor being disintegrated type deal, right? So like that's the only issue I could see with that is like technically speaking that's like not necessarily a problem because getting to the TVA is really hard, right? Like
Mhm.
so
You have to get brought to the TVA in order to get to the TVA.
or murder a bunch of their agents and steal the little thing to get there like Deadpool did, but
Okay.
either way,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
it's
Still, they
difficult.
were trying to bring him, and he just brought
Yes.
himself after he was brought.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's the one potential issue I see.
yeah. Well, I mean, but like, it also like they were always. This was these types of issues were always going to exist with an expanding universe. Like you
Right.
bring in, they have Avengers level threats and Thanos coming to destroy everything, and the Eternals are just chilling because it's like, like this isn't really our deal. We're like super powerful and we can do like whatever, and we basically have Superman and the Flash in here, but like it doesn't matter because it doesn't involve us. It doesn't involve our mission. It doesn't involve our purpose, and it's smaller than us in a way,
Right.
which is why like how we kind of explain like Captain Marvel not showing up for you know 30 years or whatever from the time she disappeared. It's like, well, there's other shit going on in the universe that like kind of needs my attention, and you guys have the Avengers, like y'all can deal with this. It's smaller than me. So, and then they bring in the Watcher and What If, and it's like, eventually he does get involved, but he's like, he has no reason to get involved because it's all just smaller than him. So we can still have like we're still going to have like Avengers movies and other movies that exist, and Captain America and all this other shit going on, and it's not going to affect like it's not going to be like a universe destroying event because the continuity of the universe itself will be maintained regardless of the outcome. So it's going to be important to certain characters and not important to others. And with an
Right.
expanding universe, you are always going to run into these types of storylines that don't involve other characters because they're not essential, which is why Kang was a good big bad for what they've set up because theoretically he could theoretically affect the entirety of the spectrum. And
Right.
if they're just gonna try and like bait and switch or just quick replace with Doom, I want to know how and I want to know why this is an event that's going to affect not just the immediate future of the characters still involved in this world, but of the totality of Loki sitting on his throne as well, if assuming that he is the anchor being of 616.
Right. When I think it's pretty obvious, not I guess not obvious, but I feel like the way they're doing it is like they push Secret Wars, they change the name, they push the release date out a year. So I think to your point, like Doom's probably the big bad in that movie, and I'll be interested to see how they build to that. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, that's going to happen in Fantastic Four for sure, because I mean they always introduce a Doom in Fantastic Four somehow, some way. Maybe a post credit thing or something, but yeah,
yeah, when is the Fantastic Four release?
next year I think.
July 25th, 2025.
Yeah, so essentially a full year away from Deadpool, which came out July 26th. Okay, so what's the Marvel
And
release?
Secret Wars is 2027. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna get. I think we're getting Doom in. When are we getting Doom? Okay. So blah blah blah. Agatha all along this year, which like I'm kind of excited for because
Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Okay, so Doomsday is May 2026, and he's the big bad. I mean, that's pretty
yeah,
Doomsday, like, so that seems pretty obvious to me. Um, and so we'll see. I do like that
yeah,
the Russo brothers are back to direct both of those movies, but yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing that is coming up because it's a very niche thing and it's totally new what they've introduced, and it I think should have been introduced much sooner, right? But there's also the potential, like, what if it's just kind of a throwaway thing? Like, because part of me is like, I don't think they were introducing this until Wolverine said he wanted in, you know? And then they introduced this, but the way Feige talked about it, it seems pretty integral. Integral. So I don't know. That's the one thing that I'm like, because like we said, we know that they rewrote the whole thing once
yeah,
Wolverine come back. So that's the like interesting part to me.
yeah. We're getting Thunderbolts like right before we get Fantastic Four. Like Thunderbolts is apparently coming out in May, and then Fantastic Four in July.
Great. I'm interested to see Thunderbolts. I think if it's done correctly, could be like a Deadpool-esque thing where it's like it's not super important, but it's like just good movies, you know?
Yeah, and then we get Ironheart, and then yeah, Avengers Doomsday May 1st, 2026. Then apparently there's going to be a Vision series in 2026.
Interesting.
And then we get Avengers Secret Wars in 2027. Blade is undated. What If Season 3 undated. Wonder Man undated. Eyes of Wakanda undated. Armor Wars undated. So I think a lot of these are going to come out before Avengers. Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of these are going to come out before Avengers. Um, but yeah, so huh.
Yeah, because I go back and forth with like I think this could be the like I mean I guess to be fair, right? So they rewrote that script in the last year, right? So or like year and a half, 2 years. When did Majors initially get in trouble? I feel like it was within the last 2 years, right?
He's arrested March 2025 or March 25th, 2023 with connection with domestic abuse. Um, April, we've got the court shit. So he's arrested. Court issues a restraining order in April, making a court appearance in May, filing allegations.
May of 2023, you said, right?
March of 2023 is when he's arrested. The trial began in November.
They started filming Deadpool and Wolverine, it says, in May of 2023. So there could have been the possibility that they rewrote Deadpool and Wolverine to take it in a new direction in the event that they were screwed with Majors.
Like
Um,
there was two potential outcomes of the movie itself.
right, like they could have written Anchor Beings off as just like a one-off, or they could have made it like a very important thing in the event that he was not.
Yeah. And then in
Because
December,
I do think if the goal of the whole like multiverse saga was Anchor Beings, it would have been introduced before like 15 pieces of media, right? So, which makes me think, to your point, the goal was Kang, because Loki was like one of the first four pieces of media. Then he's in Ant-Man Quantumania, or which one, right?
yeah,
So clearly he was like the goal to me, right? Because they were setting him up. But now it's like, okay, we got to pivot. So maybe the pivot they've made is this Anchor Beings, and that's going to be really important for us.
yeah.
Like
But I still want to see how they're gonna write, how they're gonna write Kang out. Yeah, I don't know. I still come back to I really want to like I really want some confirmation on this Loki anchor being theory because like I think it kind of makes a lot of sense. Like Loki's been like integral to everything that's happened in the MCU, almost more so than almost more so than anybody, right? Like so he like
he's the first big bad, right?
he's the
In
first big
Avengers.
bad in the Avengers. He tips off all of the people in the know to like the power of the stones by like
Yeah.
having the what does he have, the mind stone or the power stone? What stone does he have? He has a stone.
He
So
has it's the Tesseract and
the Tesseract, which is the power stone, because that's the one that right?
no, the Power Stone is the one from Guardians. The Time Stone is the one from Strange. The Soul Stone is from
It's the
Vormir.
space stone. It's the
Space
space
Stone.
stone. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's got the space stone. Okay. Because that's the one that infects Carol Danvers and makes her Captain Marvel as well.
the Tesseract. Yeah.
The Tesseract, yeah. So you know, it's been on Earth, it's existed, but he's the one that kind of tips everybody off to its importance on like a grand scale by like weaponizing it and coming for it and trying to open the portal to let Thanos in and all this other shit. So, but he was in Thor 1. He was in Thor 2. He was integral to Thor 3. Like he's been around for a lot of the space shit.
When they
Um,
intentionally didn't kill him off and created a TV series, which again, I think you could make the argument like, well, they created it for Kang, the purpose of Kang, and they needed Loki to do that because Kang was the big bad. But it's like maybe again in the pivot, they've been like, okay, we could make Loki integral.
I just think that like I think that he's the character. The more that we've talked about it, he's the character that makes the most sense as the anchor being. And I've already written in a description as to why this timeline is sacred, and it's not arbitrary as just like, oh, this is what was selected to be the sacred timeline. Selected by who, right? Like
Well, I mean, you could
he
also make the argument that like part of its, I mean, sacred nature was like, I mean, they're the ones who across all of the universes brought back half the, you know what I mean? Like, so, like, it could have been Strange, right? It could have been Spider Man. It could have been Iron Man for that purpose of like this universe was the one that brought.
the one that chose to do this.
Yes, yeah, that's what I mean. So I think they're, to your point, like, those are the two arguments I could see for making it not like super not believable, right? Is like we needed Loki alive because he's sacred to the sacred timeline, or you needed Spider-Man alive or whatever because he's sacred to the timeline,
But again, it's like a chicken or egg thing. Like
or Star-Lord or whatever.
right, but it's again, it's a chicken or the egg thing. Like at what point does this character become the anchor being? Is it as a result of the actions taken, or was it always predestined to be? And
Right.
then I think it
Well, you
has
could
to.
make the argument for Logan of either one, right? Because his actions in the end were in both Days of Future Past, which I know you haven't seen, but basically he goes back and saves the entirety of the mutant and human race, right? He saves his universe by going back in time, da 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 da. So his actions in that, and or it could have been like just from his birth, like he was such a powerful, right? It's almost like, does the universe and the timeline know that when this person's born, they're going to be this, right? Like, because then to me, like Iron
We're
Man,
getting philosophical with this shit.
right?
It's a,
Yeah,
you know, yeah, is everything, do we have free will or is everything fated to happen?
right,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Loki satisfies both of those constraints. Like if it was all fated to happen, this guy literally like tried to cause the downfall, alerted all of the Avengers to the importance of these stones, brought Thor into the fold of the Avengers, chasing after Loki, then has a negative heel turn where he becomes like a I don't know if I want to say a good guy, but you know, an ally in a lot of respects, and changes his own arc, changes the fate of the universe, and ultimately ends up supplanting the one guy who knows everything that's happened at the end of time as the new like godfather of time, holding all of this stuff together. So if it's because of his actions, he's anchored himself. If it's a predetermined thing, Kang, as he who remains, always knew that Loki and Sylvie were going to show up on his doorsteps.
right,
So it was there was some level of predetermination or predestination, and he kind of baited them into killing him, right? Like he was like in a way, like I gotta watch that scene again. It was one of the best scenes in Marvel ever, which is why I'm pissed that Majors isn't going to be a part of this anymore because like he really was a great character.
yeah,
So like he kind of baits Sylvie into that, and Loki is like, wait, like we shouldn't kill him, like we don't want to do this, blah blah blah, and ultimately he ends up getting his way. So it's like to maintain, and he was the one that was maintaining the sanctity of the sacred timeline, right? So he brought Loki to the end to give him the chance to truly supplant the sanctity of his chosen sacred timeline, right?
right. But and I think that's the thing of like, I think again, like if we're talking about like, is it the actions they take, or is it
Predetermined.
right? Because again, Iron Man, like Strange's act, like Strange clearly was like, okay, we give up the time stone in the event so that Iron Man can defeat Thanos because this is the only reality where it works, and we bring back trillions of people across, So it's like what, and to that end, Kang knew, right? Like Kang is essentially known about everything and been in charge of like pruning universes and timelines, or like the one when Ruffalo goes and she shows like the realities of time, right, and pulling the stones from that, and then he's like, well, then why did Strange give it up? And she's like, well, you know what I mean? And then she's willing to then. So it's really interesting with all these beings who have uh
Some level of knowledge of the events.
right, of like the I forget the ancient one, right? Like she could see up to her death and nothing more, right? And she knows. um so yeah, it's just interesting with these beings who essentially exist across space and time.
I'm locked in. I think that's my pick as the MCU's anchor being is Loki. I'm I'm putting that in today at 3:31 p.m. on Sunday, August 4th, 2024. That's my pick. I think it makes the most sense. And I think any other being picked would be a disservice to everything that's been set up, everything that's supposed to come in the future, and making sure that it all remains connected and explainable, right? Because it's not for everybody to sit down and, dissect it as deeply as we have and others in the, media markets and YouTubes and the people that like find this stuff interesting. But like one of the things that really attracted me to this whole MCU thing from the beginning is how they've been able to play chess with their stories and move the pieces in a certain way to set up certain events to ultimately create this like interconnected movie universe that we haven't seen previously. The level of foresight involved is it's kind of meta when you think about how we're talking about timelines and future events and everything, but it's attractive to me, and I want to be able to understand it and I want to be able to explain it. And as of right now, Loki is the only character, in my opinion, that like connects all the dots in a way that is actually going to like yield a cohesive narrative from start to finish.
I would say like the only other potential arguments could be some of the people who were initially in the snap and then came back, right? Like Spider-Man, Wanda, Star-Lord, because of the importance of them. Like that the whole reason that all of that happened was essentially to bring them back or whatever. Like that's the only, like I think they could pick one of them and it would like make sense to the continuity purpose.
But it wouldn't explain why this timeline is sacred.
At least not with the information we have so far.
Right. Which is why like I'm in on Loki right now, because with the information we have, I think he's the only one that answers either question of is it action based or is it fate based? And he is the only character with the information we have that explains why this timeline is sacred and others aren't.
Right.
Because he essentially is the only character in all of multiverses to like beat the game. And he's surely the only anchor being to beat the game, to like figure it out, to get to the end, and then to either like if this was fated to be, then that explains why it's the sacred timeline, is because the anchor being of this timeline is the one that beats the game and gets to the end and becomes the omnipotent being or some shit. Or if it's action based, then still like, it becomes sacred because of his actions. So it was always predestined to be sacred, or it was by his actions that it gets sanctified. And either way, he satisfies both of those. And I hope somebody in the writer room is bringing this shit up. If not, I need to change my career path.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on the information we have currently, but like they could be working on writing something in where it's like one of the MCU characters we've seen already for whatever reason, right? Like um that we maybe haven't explored yet.
Sure. Yeah,
I mean,
they absolutely could.
I mean, like the way they could have originally wrote it is it could have been Kang, right? And like the reason he was protecting the sacred timeline and Eternal was, you know what I mean? And like that would give argument to your point about like they could just replace that with Loki now, you know? Like
Yeah, there's also what universe was that Kang from? What universe is he who remains from? Well, no, they just Marvel. That's
you might have to say like
what Marvel Earth is he who remains from? Okay, so Reddit, he who remains is the prime 616 Kang from the future and not a variant of him. Theory one, I get that in the comics he comes from another universe. It doesn't look like Marvel is going to do that here. Too, he is the prime Kang. It's so obvious. Okay, it wouldn't make any sense for Marvel to make a variant the champion of the multiverse war. He who remains is the 616 Kang from the future. It's so obvious. He even goes out of his way to tell the Lokis he has been Ramatut and Kang the Conqueror before, even if he falls just short of saying those exact words. In the comics, Kang's past version and future version can exist at the same time alongside each other. And in the comics, Immortus is Kang after he changed his ways. This seemed to be the underlined by the fact that Loki asks he who remains why he would be willing to give up so much power. My guess is there is no way to defeat a time traveling villain who can do it all in a chair unless you can recruit his past and future versions to fight him. That would be a pretty epic setup if Marvel did something like that, pitting the Avengers and Kang's future and past selves against his present self. One half has already been done. Now all they need is Iron Lad. Immortus likely knew that the Lokis would not take his offer in taking over the TVA, which is why Loki was sent back in time to Immortus's younger version of himself, which is Kang the Conqueror, perhaps to show Loki what he could have prevented. Okay, this is a long theory. I'm not going to read all of this, but right, but the TVA created, but wasn't the TVA created to basically manage the sacred timeline and prevent branches? And the sacred timeline was created to prevent further multiversal wars, which was created when multiple multiversal Kangs decided to start a war in the first place. Yeah, to me, the existence of the TVA raises more questions than it does answers. That part is true.
Yep.
Um,
Like clearly the TVA was created to protect the sacred timeline, right? I think we can all agree on that. But
sure.
what like the I think the point that I'm getting from this is like something could have happened in the future where they needed to create the TVA, go back in time and protect the sacred timeline, right? Because it's like I would assume that Earth 616 died and the whole universe went to shit or something, right? And so similar to what happened with the bringing the stones back to kill Thanos, that like I could see Kang again going back in time to create the TVA to protect this, because if Earth 616, the sacred timeline, is destroyed, then everything ceases to exist, right? So that's what I mean, where like they could be writing something.
Say that again. You lost me a little bit, but I think you might
Okay.
be on something.
So the sacred timeline gets destroyed at some point in the future. The consequences of such destruction then create a situation where all of the universes are being destroyed. So Kang and a group of people then go back in time, create the TVA, save the sacred timeline, right? And thereby protect the universe. And now the TVA is there and it's created for future events where this timeline is affected, essentially.
The reason why, again, I'm tying this into my theory. The reason why all the universes, everything got fucked with the destruction of 616 is because Loki died before he could show up in the TVA and become time god. So it's like it's a circular loop in a way.
No, but I'm saying when Kang goes back, right, and to create the TVA and protect it, they solve whatever issue destroyed the universe in the first place. Now it could be,
and the issue that destroyed the universe in the first place was the lack of existence of Loki.
right. I'm assuming
that's my theory. That's my theory.
I'm assuming that what will come is the lack of existence of the anchor being, right? I'm assuming.
And then we still have to stop the Council of Kangs at some point, because like they did set that up in Quantum Mania. Like, he who remains is dead, Kang the Conqueror is dead in Quantum Mania, but they still have the Council of Kangs out there, so we still have to stop that at some point.
Yep.
And how we're gonna write that off, is beyond me. It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, he was a fantastic villain.
Yeah. I don't feel like we got anything solved today, too. Like throughout all of these rants, I feel like I have like the same questions. I now have more questions, and I now have a theory as to who the MCU's anchor being is that I really want to be right.
Yeah, I don't think we solved it, but I don't necessarily think my goal was to solve. I was just like, let's flesh this out a little bit, and see uh where it
Oh
goes
yeah,
and what we can kind of think about.
yeah. I didn't think we were going to solve it. I'm just googling Loki is the MCU's anchor being. Huh. This is interesting. I want to see if I can load this. Oh, no. Um, so Reddit is great. Like it would be funny if Spider-Man is actually the MCU's anchor being and Sony just stops the deal with Marvel because of they're just like, wait, what?
I didn't even think about that. That might be a reason for it not to be Spider-Man.
Yeah, right? Like you can make him integral, but oh man. All right, Screen Rant. Best five candidates for the MCU's anchor being. Let's see what they say.
Well, hold on, hold
Scarlet
on. Okay, so you read Scarlet Witch #1, right?
Scarlet Witch can still be the key to the multiverse saga as an anchor being.
Well, I was gonna say let's predict the five. So I guess Scarlet Witch we know is one.
Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna predict their five. Right, fine. So Scarlet Witch, I think what their five is gonna be Tom Holland Spider Man. It's gonna be RDJ as fucking Iron Man, or just yeah, it's gonna be Stark. I could see Strange, I guess, being a candidate, and then I'm gonna hope that they take my advice and make it Loki.
Okay, so that's your five. Strange and okay, because I would
Yeah,
go. I would for sure go Scarlet Witch. I would go
yeah.
Cap. I would go Star Lord. Um, I would go Strange, and I would go. Uh, hmm. I would go Hulk.
Okay, so number four is Doctor Strange.
Okay,
That's their predicting, and
and Scarlet Witch
um,
was already on there, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Let me see. Hold on. In the absence, Wong might be the universe sorcerer supreme, but Strange is undeniably Earth 616's main protector. Even before Iron Man's death, it was Strange who kept all kinds of cosmic and magical threats at bay, preventing Dormammu's invasion, keeping an eye on Loki. All right, but so part of this explanation though doesn't necessarily make sense because it's not like Logan prevented like all these like interdimensional threats or whatever.
No, he did go back in time to prevent in Days of Future Past. Essentially, what's happening is the X-Men are about to be eradicated by these Sentinels, and Charles sends Logan back in time to a younger version of himself to stop Jennifer Lawrence's character Mysterio from killing someone because she kills someone and sets off a series of events where mutants become hunted. So he does save his universe in that respect. But And he also saves it technically from Jean Grey when she's trying to destroy it and he kills her. But anyway. Okay, so
Yeah.
who's number three?
Spider-Man.
Okay.
Yeah. Spider-Man's central role in Marvel history is akin to Wolverine's importance to the X-Men movies. Hugh
Right. I
Jackman's
guess
original, yeah,
Hulk instead of Spider-Man to not be derivative, but
Hugh Jackman's original Wolverine in this universe is anchor being because he's more special than all other Wolverines in the multiverse. Deadpool passed this knowledge on to Jackman's new Wolverine. The same can be said about the MCU's Tony Stark, as the MCU was born with Iron Man and Stark's death marked the end of an era. However, if Iron Man's death had to happen as suggested by the inevitability of Strange's plan, then Spider-Man would be the perfect candidate for the MCU's anchor being. Okay. Like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, Tom Holland's Spider-Man has showcased impressive feats of bravery and humility. Also, same could be said for Loki. He's literally just sitting on a chair holding all the timelines together
yep.
for eternity, presumably, right? You want to talk about a jail sentence? That guy's just stuck there holding the fucking threads together. He's like Atlas from like Greek mythology, just like
Yeah.
holding up the world. You know, that guy's fucked.
Okay.
All
So
right, so
who's
then
two?
you definitely don't change your pick. Hulk's gradual disappearance could count as his timeline's anchor being death. Hulk being his universe's anchor being would compensate for his lack of movies. Future MCU projects could surprise audiences and reveal that the anchor being of the MCU's main timeline is Hulk, who technically didn't his movie come out before Iron Man's or did it come out after?
Before.
The Ed Norton one.
Yeah.
Technically.
But was it Sony or was it
The Incredible Hulk. No, it's produced by Marvel Comics and Marvel Studios. It's the second film in the MCU. Okay, so
Okay, I'm looking up when it was released.
yeah, it came out it
2008.
came out a month after Iron Man.
Iron Man. Yeah, May
Yeah.
2nd. This is June 13th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So instead of killing off Smart Hulk to kick off the events of Avengers 5 and Secret Wars, Bruce Banner's successful attempt to kill his alter ego by merging the man with the monster could count as Hulk's demise to bring Earth 616 anchor being back. Bruce Banner would then find himself forced to resurrect the original Hulk, dooming himself to deal with his uncontrollable alter ego for the rest of his life. Such a sacrifice would open the door for many Hulk stories that seem impossible with the tamer Smart Hulk, including the long-awaited World War Hulk movie. Okay.
And then who's number one?
Kang.
Yeah, which is
Kang's Earth. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kang's Earth 616 variant can help kick off Avengers 5 and Secret Wars. Kang's death can be his perfect send-off as the MCU moves on from the villain. Avengers 5, originally titled Avengers The Kang Dynasty, is officially being rewritten after Jonathan Majors' firing due to his legal troubles. As a result, Kang the Conqueror and his variants will no longer be the Multiverse Saga's main antagonists. And both Avengers 5 and Avengers Secret Wars will likely pivot to a different villain. However, the first thing Avengers 5 could do is acknowledge Kang's departure, revealing that Kang's 616 variant is an anchor being that has died. This way, Kang's story can be properly closed, and he can at least have a certain impact on the Multiverse Saga's conclusion. I like that. I like Loki more, but I like that.
Yeah,
Loki,
and I think we both said Kang would make a lot of sense, but probably not anymore because
yeah. Loki and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania introduced numerous Kang variants, including He Who Remains, Mortis, Ramatut, the Scarlet Centurion, and the rest of the Council of Kangs. But Earth 616 Kang variant was never mentioned. Hence, the Kang variant in the MCU's main timeline can be killed without affecting what has already been established. His death could also help Kang's replacement villains seem more powerful if they're the ones responsible. Okay, so that would kind of negate the theory that the He Who Remains is the 616 Kang, but I
Right.
don't mind it. Um,
It's interesting.
yeah, the most famous Kang variant who hasn't been introduced yet is Iron Lad, a young version of Nathaniel Richards who realizes that he's on a path to become a supervillain and tries to avoid it. Iron Lad's introduction as an anchor being in the MCU would allow Avengers 5 and Avengers Secret Wars to continue Kang's story with a different actor and connect to Loki and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania as a new main antagonist takes center stage, whatever the MCU chooses to do with the Kang now. Um, okay, so that would be interesting, actually, if they set up Iron Lad. They can still keep Kang, but it's a different actor
Right.
because it's a younger version. And they're making an Iron Heart series. They're apparently making like a Power Wars or an Iron Wars or whatever series. So like
Right. And
they could
Iron
intro.
Lad, I mean the I just Googled the armor looks pretty similar to Iron Man, right? So you could have like the nostalgia with Iron Man there to an
Yeah,
extent.
yeah. And so you could get it. You can get a totally new character. You get the nostalgia points. You tie it into some of these other side projects that they're doing. You acknowledge Kang's existence, and the fucking Avengers Doom whatever uh is basically Infinity War, right? It's Doom trying to kill Iron Lad for whatever reason.
Yeah.
We have to establish that. All right, so yeah, I mean, I guess we can probably draft at this point. I think we've kind of exhausted this topic for my mental capacity at this point, unless you have any closing thoughts on the statement or on the topic itself.
No, I mean I think it's interesting when you flesh it out and you start thinking about it, right? And
Uh huh.
looking at everything and just there's a lot of places they could go. Like I said, unless they initially set it up to be Kang, which I'm not sure they did. Do you know what I mean? Like, um, like my money is still that this was not the direction they were going, but then when they lost Kang, it's the direction they're going. It could have been the direction they're going, and now they have to pivot from Kang to somebody else. But I think it at least gives me hope when we talk about and flesh this out of like this whole start could be dog shit, but from here forward, it could be really good and interesting, right?
I definitely don't think it was the intention they play or the direction they were planning on going. I think that the direction they wanted to go was end of Loki season 1, we kill He Who Remains, and we get into season 2 with them trying to fix shit. But then all of the Kangs show up because He Who Remains isn't keeping them at bay anymore. And we do get Avengers 5, the Kang Dynasty, which is a war against all the Kangs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
That's a
ultimately
good.
that's where they start to pull in all these other characters like, the X-Men's and the blah blah blahs and the whatevers is from all these different dimensions and all these different Earths to stop all these different Kangs.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna end this one and then go do the second one real quick.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Toodles.